Okay, so what we have established in the previous session is that what was usually thought of as waves exhibits particle, it has particle properties, and also de Broglie postulated that what is usually thought of as particles also has wave properties, and therefore depending upon the context in which we are doing the experiment or making the observation, we need to take into account of the wave nature, or we need to take into account of the particle nature. Okay, in certain cases when we look at light, we need to take particle nature of light in certain observations, certain experiment, in order to understand what is going on. Similarly, we need to also take into account of the the wave nature of electrons in order to understand some of the results which which are due to electrons. Okay, and that is very much so with the case of electrons energy and the electrical property of materials like silicon crystal. Okay, so we cannot lay aside the wave nature of electron in order to understand the electrical properties of silicon crystal. So that's basically the reason why we are getting into all of this. Okay, another very important postulate. So far we seen two postulates. One is the connection between energy and frequency given by Einstein, and so let me just main postulates. Postulates in quantum mechanics. So first one, what we saw was relation between energy and frequency of light particles. So there is some relation between energy and frequency. So that is given by E is equal to E photon is equal to h nu. And number two, we saw relation between momentum and wavelength of I'll call it as matter waves, and it is given by lambda is equal to h by p. Okay, so you could write it as h cross k also. Sorry, that's not correct. Okay, so just like I have written this as h cross omega. Okay, so if I have to write it as, okay, let me inverse this and write. So P is equal to h by lambda, which I can write it as h cross k. So where omega is equal to 2 pi nu, then k is equal to 2 pi by lambda, and of course h cross is basically h by 2. So these are two alternate way. When you are so much into physics, instead of h nu you will always use only h cross omega, and in advanced subjects on physics we always use momentum as h cross k. Okay, we don't write it as h by lambda, we will write it as h cross k. So these are two alternate way of stating the same thing. So main postulates that we have seen so far is these two, and now let's go to the third main postulate. So these are very fundamental postulates. um, number 3. It is called the uncertainty principle. So what does the uncertainty principle says? I mentioned to you in the beginning of quantum mechanics introduction that it is not really right to ask certain questions such as where is the electron and what is at a particular time and what is its momentum. Okay, so these questions are not really right to ask because there is an inherent uncertainty. Okay, um, for example, position and momentum are okay for pure point particles. Okay, physical quantities like position, we usually represent it with x, and momentum p are well defined. They are well defined notions, right? We have no problem in talking about where am I and what is my momentum notion in classical mechanics. But in quantum mechanics, the difference is that you can't specify the value of x and p at the same time. So if you become accurate with respect to x, then you will become inaccurate with p. Okay. If you become accurate with respect to p, if you determine the momentum very surely, then you will end up making the position very uncertain. Okay, so there is an inherent uncertainty. So this is initially very unacceptable to our intuitions, because that's not what we are familiar with. Particles, the day-to-day particles like tennis ball, I said, you can clearly say like this tennis ball is at location x and it is moving with the momentum p at such and such time. There is no problem in saying that with respect to a tennis ball. But with respect to electrons, you can't say that, and the reason is this: there is an inherent uncertainty. So which is usually so there is an inherent. So when I say inherent, what I mean is like it is not because of the inability of an instrument to find out what is the exact position or what is the exact momentum. So this is there is an inherent uncertainty in determining the value of a pair of conjugate we call them conjugate variables. An example of conjugate variable is position and momentum. Position in x direction and momentum in x direction. Okay, position in x direction, x coordinate, and x coordinate, momentum, and position. Okay, these are conjugate variables. X, px, they are conjugate variable. Similarly, y and py, they are conjugate variables. Z and pz, okay, they are conjugate. So these are conjugate variables. Okay, but if you say what about x and py, no problem in determining this exactly. I can determine both of these could be determined simultaneously. So there is no problem with that. So only problem of this specifying both at the same time is with respect to conjugate variables. Okay, x and px. Another very popular example is energy and the time. Okay, so energy and time is also conjugate variable. Okay, which means that if you say the particle has or a electron has particular energy at a particular time, so that is not possible to be specified because there is an uncertainty in which time the electron has that energy. Okay, because E and T are also conjugate variable. Okay, so all of these are conjugate variables, pairs, and we can't determine. So this is captured in what is called as the uncertainty relationship, which is delta P into delta X. This uncertainty will be always greater than H cross, or delta E into delta T greater than H cross. So this is fundamental. Okay, so if it is X, it is Px. Okay, we are talking about, and if it is Y, then Py. Okay, I am only writing one of this. So this is the uncertainty relationship where delta P is the uncertainty in the determination of X component of. So delta Px is the uncertainty in the determination of the X component. X component of momentum. And delta X is the uncertainty in determining the position in the X direction. So these two can't be determined at the same time accurately. Okay, so now this H cross, as you know, it is very, very small, right? H is known to you, 6.625 into 10 raised to minus 34 divided by 2 pi. Okay, that is H cross, and that's very, very small. And we don't usually care in our everyday experience about that sort of accuracy in determining position and momentum. We don't care. But when it comes to electrons, we need the momentum values are like very, very, very small, as we have seen earlier. It is of the order of the in our calculation of the previous example, it is basically 9.1 into 10 raised to minus 31 into 10 raised to 5, which is like very close to the Planck's constant. Since the mass of electron is very, very small, and velocities of electron is larger compared to the velocity with which we usually move, so the momentum it comes somewhere around the Planck's constant, and as a result, when you determine the momentum, we need to determine to that level of accuracy. Only then we say that we know the momentum. Whereas in our day-to-day life, when we say momentum, we are talking about very large, like 1 meter per second we are moving and 1 kilogram is moving. So it is like momentum is like one unit. Okay, 1 unit. Comparing it with the Planck's constant, it is very, very high, and therefore when we determine the momentum, we don't need an accuracy of the order of Planck's constant, right? So it will be like 1 kilogram meter per second, 1 kilogram meter per second, 2 kilogram meter per second. We don't want plus or minus Planck's constant there. Okay, so that much because that is like 30 orders of magnitude lesser. So we don't experience the day-to-day life the uncertainty principle. If suppose we would be experiencing uncertainty principle in day-to-day life, then in our length scales, not in the Planck scales, but in our length scale, if it will be very different universe altogether. Like nobody can see another person moving, or you can't measure the velocity of somebody moving, and at the same time tell where he is. Okay, so that kind of picture doesn't come in our day-to-day life. Alright, so this is also one of the fundamental postulate which has to be kept in mind. There are conjugate variables and they can't be determined simultaneously. Okay, so determining one accurately comes at the expense of uncertainty in the other conjugate variable. Okay, it doesn't say that you cannot determine the position accurately. It only says that there is it comes at the cost of making the momentum uncertain. Now this is in a way actually connected with the wave nature. Okay, wave nature is what is giving rise to this uncertainty relationship. There's a deeper connection there. Okay, so we will I will also come to these later in signals and system course. Again, I will try to show you why wave nature will give rise to this sort of uncertainty there. Okay, in some of the topics of Fourier transform, we can see those link there. Okay, right now I'm moving on. So these are the three fundamental things which we saw, and now all these fundamental ideas like energy is equal to related with frequency, momentum is related with the lambda. So all these things are incorporated. These fundamental aspects of quantum mechanics are incorporated in what is called as the Schrödinger equation, which is the governing equation, just like Newton's law is the governing equation for microscopic mechanics. So in microscopic mechanics, Schrödinger equation encompasses all these fundamental aspects of quantum mechanics. So let's go directly into Schrödinger equation. Now what is Schrödinger equation? If somebody asks what is Schrödinger equation, it is basically okay, let me write it this way. It is I h cut d by dt of psi is equal to, so psi is basically called the wave function. I will define it x and t. So I am writing 1d in 1d, okay, in one dimension. Schrödinger equation is I h cross d by dt of psi is equal to h operator acting on spin. So this is the very famous Schrödinger equation. So this has a lot of new concepts in it. All the concepts which I told earlier, they are incorporated in it, and to be more frank, there is no derivation to this equation. You can't derive this. This is a fundamental, you have to accept it as a fundamental law of nature, which was discovered, okay, which was through various experiments, and in order to explain various experiments with respect to microscopic world, it has been discovered by Schrödinger that if you take this equation and then apply this equation, then we can find out you know the result that we get in many microscopic experiment, which involves atoms, which involves crystals, etc. Now, so here there are various entities here. H cross you already know. H cross is basically h by 2 pi, where h is basically 6.625 into 10 raised to minus 34 joule second, and then divided by 2 pi. So that you already know. Then what is the other thing? I is okay. In electrical engineering, we should take J, because I is reserved for current. So let me just change it to J. So J is basically square root of minus 1. Okay, so that is the imaginary value. Okay, then we have psi. Okay, psi. So this is basically called wave function. Wave function. And what does wave function gives? And there were a lot of debates after this equation was postulated to ask the fundamental equation. Various other people have postulated various other equation also, but later it was found that it was not applicable in many cases. So finally everybody settled down to this equation, which was postulated by Schrodinger. Now then there was a debate, what is this psi? Okay, so there is something that is waving. So I said that electrons has so this is basically for the equation that governs for electrons. Okay, this is particles like electrons follow these equations. Now the question was like for a long period, for many months, maybe even 2 years, people were not really certain, including the one who is the who discovered this equation, was not sure what is psi. What is psi? It's a function of space and time, but what does it mean? What does it show? Okay, or in other words, I can say that what is the, so it is some kind of wave amplitude. So psi is basically called wave function, and it is some kind of wave amplitude. So it's a wave equation, right? Schrodinger equation is a wave equation. So it is a wave amplitude, and you can find out this wave amplitude. Okay. By solving this equation, you find out the wave amplitude as a function. It is a wave amplitude that depends upon position and depends upon time. Now in electromagnetic theory you have wave equation, and when you find out the wave amplitude, it is basically telling you the strength of the or the amplitude, strength or amplitude of the wave. For example, water waves. So it is basically talking about the amount by which the crust go up or the trough goes down. So that is what the amplitude is showing, or strings, vibrating strings like a guitar string. So what is psi there? So I mean there the amplitude of that vibration is what is or the strength of vibration, you can say. That is what is usually amplitude. But here for entities such as electrons, what are these amplitudes? Does that mean that there is something that is waving? So there is in fact it is still not a settled issue. Okay, that what exactly is this amplitude that we are talking about here? So it is still not settled. Even still people debate about it, but what is widely accepted was an interpretation given by Max Born. Okay, so Max Born gave an interpretation of psi of x and t, and what he said is that if you square this, okay, this gives you the probability. This gives you a probability. So it's psi square is basically a probability function to find, or it is the probability density. That's it. So if you square it, you get the probability density to find electron. Find electron. Probability density to find electron. So that's what Max Born said. In other words, what is the probability that the electrons will be found between, in other words, the probability to find electron between x and x plus an infinitesimal distance x plus dx at time t and, or between time t and, or let me just put this much, I am not bringing time into the picture. Okay, so the probability to find electron between x and x plus dx is, or at a time t, let me say that way, at a time t is given as psi of x comma t whole square dx. Okay, so this is probability, not probability density. When I say psi square, it is the probability density. So it is varying with x and t, but now I am saying time is fixed. At time t, if the electron is between x and x plus dx, so then this is the probability to find the electron. So this is the most widely accepted. This is though we still don't, this interpretation doesn't tell what is psi exactly, but from psi you can find out this information. So that is what the Max Born interpretation, and this is the most widely accepted interpretation. In any book you will find this interpretation, but still it, if you clearly look at it, doesn't say what is psi. It only says what is psi square. Psi square, and it is related with a probability. Okay, so that is another quantity which is in the Schrodinger equation. And then the final thing is h. What is h? Now h is basically called Hamiltonian operator. Any letter with a cap like this, that's a shorthand representation of representing an operator. So this is called Hamiltonian operator. Okay, not operation, Hamiltonian operator. And what is Hamiltonian operator? Which corresponds to which is the Hamiltonian operator which correspond to the total energy. Total energy, you know that it is kinetic energy plus potential energy. Okay, so in classical mechanics, probably you might not have studied this. Classical mechanics, the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy is called Hamiltonian. So that is how that word comes. So you just understand right now that Hamiltonian means kinetic energy plus potential energy. H is equal to, the standard way of writing is H. So there it is not an operator in classical mechanics. It is basically kinetic energy plus potential energy. Usually it is written as T plus V. T stands for kinetic energy and potential energy is standing for. And V is usually a function of position. Potential energy is a function of position. So let me make it more explicit. So T is basically function of velocity. Okay, velocity. If it is one dimensional, there is only one direction. So let me just use V. So like half mv square. And whereas capital V is a function of position. Usually this is the case. There are certain cases where potential energy depends on velocity also. For example, particle moving in a magnetic field. So the potential energy is the force will have velocity dependence, but normally normally V, capital V, or the potential energy is actually a function of position, and kinetic energy half mv square is a function of velocity. So this is the normal, this is classical. Okay. So let me say in classical mechanics, this is classical mechanics, but in quantum mechanics we elevate this H into an operator. Okay. So we need to modify this. Okay, the normal one, half mv square plus whatever is or v of x. Let me write like this. So what will happen in another way of writing is in terms of momentum. Kinetic energy could be also written as p square by 2m like this. So that is classical mechanics. Now when you come to quantum mechanics, this Hamiltonian, which is the sum of kinetic energy plus potential energy, which is a total energy, becomes an operator. Okay. What do I mean by that? It is I mean minus square by 2m square by tau x square plus v of x. So if you look at this expression and compare it with what I wrote here, so you can compare these two. This one you can compare with this one. Okay, there is a link between the two. Okay, so the second term v of x, it just remain as such, nothing is changed there, but what is changed is basically the p. So 2m is also there. Okay, now you see so when you go from classical mechanics to quantum mechanics, p square will become minus h square by dou square by dou x square. So that is what you need to look at. So this is our p square. Or you can say that what will happen to p is this, or px. If it is one dimension, px is basically p. So p goes to minus I h ket dou by dou x. So this is our p. Now p square means minus, so this into this. Okay, so that will become I into I will become minus 1. Okay, so it will become minus square by dou x. So this is the transformation to go from classical to, so wherever you have p, you replace it with the minus I h cut dou by dou x. Wherever you have p square, you can replace it with minus I h square. I goes, I into I become minus 1, and minus 1 to minus will become plus. So effectively there will be a minus sign. And dou by dou x of dou by dou x is dou square by dou x square. So therefore, what I wrote as Schrodinger equation could be rewritten. So let me rewrite it here. Let me just draw a line. So Schrodinger equation, I am continuing. So what did I say? Schrodinger equation is basically I h cut dou by dou t of psi of x comma t is equal to operator acting on x comma t. Now what we do is substitute for 1d. Okay, so this is for 1d. So that is I h cut dou by dou t is equal to, so here you write h square by 2n dou square psi by dou x square. So it's a partial derivative equation plus v of x. I think earlier I did not put partial derivative in time because there are two derivatives involved. H also has a derivative which is with respect to x. So I should have put the time derivative as partial derivative. Okay, so this is the Schrodinger equation. It's also called the time dependent Schrodinger. So this is exactly the Schrodinger equation. This one is the exact Schrodinger equation, and when you are so in general, if you want to put it, you can replace this with r vector in 3D. So this is not just 1D, it is 3D equation, then it will be an r vector. So that is the exact Schrodinger equation, and which will reduce to this in 1D problems. Okay, so that's Schrodinger equations. Now to find the solution of the Schrodinger equation is basically solving the differential equation, because this is a differential equation, just like wave equation is a differential equation. Probably you might have studied wave equation in mathematics, differential equation solutions. We have a very similar equation. So if I compare with the classical wave equation, so classical wave equation, that is like if you want to find out the amplitude of vibration on a string or water waves, etc., the equation that we will use is basically something similar. So let me write it as rho square. So let me take u as the amplitude by rho h square, then minus 1 by let's say v square square u of c by t square. So this is well known, and for many centuries people have studied this equation. So this equation is not anything new. Okay, it was I think even from 1700s this equation was known to people. Soon after the calculus was invented, this equation was arrived at, and you can arrive at this equation by some simple arguments. And this is the type of equation that governs the classical waves. Wave theory is basically governed by this equation. But if you compare it with the Schrodinger equation, one major difference that you see is that the space derivative is of second order, and time derivative is of first order. Okay, whereas in the classical wave equation, the space derivative and the time derivative both are second order. Okay. So that is one difference. So initially people proposed equations that contain both the space derivative and time derivative second order, because they basically adapted from the classical version of wave equation, but that was found not suitable for describing electrons later, and then Schrodinger came up with an equation in which the space derivative is second order and time derivative is first order. Okay, so that is just a comparison. Okay, and where this constant here, it is the velocity of the wave. Okay, v is basically the velocity of wave. So this is a propagate. It shows how the waves will propagate with the velocity v. When you find the solution, you will get something. So solution, if you find out for this equation, you will get it as u of xt v. It will be of this format. It will be a function in x minus vt form. So the argument of the function will be in the form of, though it is depending upon x and t, but x and t will enter as x minus vt. So which means that something is propagating with a velocity, with a speed of v. So probably you have studied this in earlier classes. But now let's come to the solution of Schrodinger equation. Okay, how to simplify Schrodinger equation. Okay, so the next heading is basically from time dependent to time independent. There is a version of Schrodinger equation which is called time independent. That means it's only a function of space. Okay. Same thing you can do with the classical wave equation also, but I am not going into those right now. Okay, so from time dependent to time dependent. So if you see a Schrodinger equation again, we have I squared rho by rho t of psi, which is a function of x and t, is equal to minus squared by 2m rho square psi of x and t divided by dou x square. So it's a partial differential equation, v of x into psi of x comma t. So this is it's a partial, which is a partial differential equation. PDE is a partial differential equation. Now what we do is, like, in order to solve the differential equation, there are various techniques. Probably you are aware of variable separable method. Variable separable method. This is a popular method in solving partial differential equation. So where we assume that it is not possible to apply this method in all cases, but in cases where the differential equation has a particular form which allow us to separate the time part and the space part, then you can apply this method. So we will take this wave function, which is a function of x and t, as a product of two part. Okay, so the product of two parts. So let me call one part as phi of x, and then the other part as like f of t. If you write like this, and then you check whether you can separate all the space part into one side and all the time part into other side of the equal sign, then you can apply this method. So that is also the check whether you can apply this method or not. So that is, if you substitute that, so you just put or replace psi of x with this product of two function, and then everything remains the same. Plus p of x into psi of x into f of t. Now what we can do is that we can divide throughout with psi of x comma t, that is product of these two functions. So we will get this is basically algebraics. So here the derivative is only with respect to f of t. Psi of x is a constant. So when you divide it with so divide the entire thing with 1 by psi of x into f of t. Just divide throughout both LHS and RHS. So then what will happen is that psi of x will cancel on the left hand side. You will have IH by f of t into dou f by dou t, dou f by dou t. That will be the LHS, which is purely time. Okay, you have only time functions here because we have divided the psi of x with psi of x and it is gone. And similarly on the right hand side, f of t will come out of the derivative and it will cancel with what is the division with f of t, and what we have is basically h squared by 2m 1 by psi of x into dou square psi of x by dou x square or let me write it slightly different way. So this will be the first term, h square by 2m, that is for the first term, and f of t cancels, so we have this, and then plus we have both f of t and psi of x cancel for the second term. So you see that left hand is fully a function of time, and the right hand only a function of x, okay, or let me say t. So this is the case where you can apply. In such cases you could apply variable separation method successfully. And if something which is only a function of time has to be equal with something which is only a function of x, and if that has to be true for all values of time and x, the only possibility is that it has to be a constant. So the whole thing has to be a constant. This is the only way, and that constant we will call it as E. E is some constant. So if you equate it to a constant, that is the only way. What is the argument? Because LHS is only a function of time, RHS is only a function of x, and if two quantities, one a function of time, another a function of x, if for all values of time and x, if it has to be equal, then it is only possible if those two functions are constants. So this will lead to two equations. So this will lead to first equation, I squared by f of t into dou f by dou t is equal to E, equation 1. And the second equation is like RHS equal to E, minus h squared by 2m into 1 by dou square psi of x by dou x square plus p of x is equal to E, equation 2. Now you can take this equation and write it as a ordinary differential equation. Now you see that I can remove this dou because it's only a function of time, so I can write it as df by dt is equal to I can take this I h cut to the other side, and it will become E by I h cut, E by I h cut into f of t. So it's an ordinary differential equation, and the solution is known for this equation. Solution is known for this equation, and the second equation, what we get is basically dou square by f x. So I can again change dou square with the d square, right? Because it is only in x, so d square psi of x by dx square, then plus v of x into e of x into psi of x. Okay, so let me just write the time being h cut squared by 2m here, and that is equal to, I just multiplied with the psi of x, e so this if you look at again what is on the LHS is basically the Hamiltonian operator. In the original Schrödinger equation we have substituted h as this, but only difference is that instead of phi you have a psi here. So you compare it with this particular equation. So the RHS of this equation you can compare with the LHS of the equation below. So the RHS, if you go and compare it with the LHS of this equation, then you will see they are same, except for phi replaced with the psi replaced with phi. So we can write it as the second equation can be written as h operator. for phi of x is equal to E psi of x. So this way you can shorten and write it, and this is what is called as now there is no time here in this version of Schrodinger equation, so this is called time independent Schrodinger equation. Okay, so I will stop here and we will continue from here in the next class.